Hello and welcome to the MeasurePod by MeasureLab, the podcast dedicated to the ever-changing world of data and analytics, with your hosts Dara Fitzgerald and Matthew Hewson. Between them, they've spent more years than they'd like to admit wrestling with dashboards, data quality, and the occasional Google curveball. So join us as we share stories about how analytics really works today and where it might be headed tomorrow. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome back to the MeasurePod. I'm Dara, joined by Matthew as always. Matthew, hi, how are you today, this week?
All right, I'm surviving. I've got a cough. That's my health update.
I feel like this is a theme. You need to stop mentioning how weak and sickly you are.
It's the two young children that keep bringing diseases home continuously.
Yeah, I hear they do that.
Yeah, so I say it in case I splutter halfway through talking about something. That's why I'm mentioning it. But apart from that, I'm okay. How are you?
So yeah, I'm okay. I was gonna ask an extra qualifying question. We were always saying about this like existential dread, and then on the other side, you've maybe got this like enthusiasm and drive for what's happening in the industry. I don't even know if it is a scale. I think they're maybe not on opposite ends. But where are you on the fizz versus dread scale?
I think I've just sort of settled into a sense of inevitability with everything. Of like, I kind of know, I kind of have a theory of where everything's going down the line in years to come, and that there's not a huge amount that can be done to change that, and just to work with it and ride the wave and do good work. That's kind of where I'm at. It's like, I don't know, peace, contentment. Nirvana. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think ride the wave.
I think you've been fizzy.
I'm maybe a bit fizzy. I was going to do the ride the wave. I don't actually know what it is. Is it that? What's the thing surfers do?
The hacker. Is it the hacker?
I don't know.
Hacker.
Don't know. I shouldn't try and do things that I don't understand.
No.
Anyway, ride the wave. Yeah, I am a bit fizzy. I think you're right. Bit fizzy Fitzgerald. Just swept up in. And this is we do love a segue. But the danger is we segue too early. So this is going to be a segue for later. But this is related to what we're going to be talking about today, all the movings and shakings and everything else and riding the wave. But yeah, I'm excited, a bit like you. I'm having a clarification. I feel like I'm seeing a clearer and clearer picture of where things are going. Obviously, nobody knows. I mean, no one ever knows where things can end up. But I think more than ever, nobody really knows for sure. But it's exciting. And I think just being part of it and just being swept up in it is quite exciting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time to be alive.
It is. It does make being a podcast host more difficult though. I'm sure you'll agree, because even listening back to the last one that we did, which was 25 years ago? Was it 26 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
It already feels like there's so much more that we could have included or so much that's changed. So that's probably a sensible starting. Let's just take a little step back. It's probably worth saying, right, well, what's actually happened? What are the kind of key things that have happened since the last episode came out? What's the big news? We obviously couldn't possibly cover everything that's happened, but what are the big things that have happened since the last one?
I think the two headline pieces of two big models came out, I think, since the last time we talked. So literally on the same day, maybe even hours apart, I think Claude released Opus 4.6. And then I think, and a couple of hours later, OpenAI released Codex, 5.3 on Codex, which is their like local host coding platform thing. Both very good models by all accounts, particularly good at coding and just churning through tasks in one hit and producing really good stuff.
The context is huge, right?
Yeah.
Context window, 1 million tokens.
Yeah, massive. And that's something like Google's been leading on that for a while in terms of the context windows. But then Anthropic, I think, they've jumped up to that 1 million number. And yeah, it's a pattern of some trading blows between OpenAI and Anthropic a little bit recently. They don't seem to be punching much towards Google, but they definitely seem to be trying to swing at each other a lot more.
Yeah, and it's kind of a little bit of a case of it's like, that kind of a fight where it's like slapping rather than, it's in like that it's a bit of a cliche or whatever. I don't know what it is, that kind of like slapping at each other rather than a real fight.
Cat fight,
exactly. It's been a bit snipey, hasn't it? I'd almost say I'm a bit disappointed in Anthropic. We've talked before about how we quite like their kind of their moral direction and the way they conduct themselves, but to me, I felt it was a little bit, it's a little bit snipey to be taking some of the shots at them that they are. Maybe shows, it's just my personal view, but maybe shows a little bit of insecurity on their side, to be kind of not attacking, but taking shots at them through advertising. And
yeah, it definitely feels like maybe they're just sensing a little bit of weakness in OpenAI that hasn't been there before. Like it definitely seemed for a few years that OpenAI were this untouchable. A few years, not that long.
Just a few seconds.
Still been about 2 years since this all bloody started. Yeah, but like it felt like Anthropic were untouchable for a while, and nobody could catch them, and Google were endlessly releasing models in the hopes of getting close and never quite could, and Anthropic was there or thereabouts, but not really ever competing. And it just seems, I can't quite tell if it's because I don't really use OpenAI at all anymore. I'm in Gemini and I'm in Claude for coding work. So I can't tell if me being moved out of that ChatGPT OpenAI world is leading into my thinking of like they're in trouble and it's they're not performing as well as they should, or whether it's the reality. Because I'm pretty sure I saw a chart the other day that active users of ChatGPT in comparison to the others is still massively higher on those fronts.
I wonder if that's a case of and obviously this worked in Google's favor, but I wonder if this is a case of it being like the established brand in a way. So for the mass of people who are using LLMs for, maybe slightly more superficial is the wrong word, but people who are just using it as a kind of almost like a beefed up search engine, they probably don't have any reason to move away from ChatGPT, because that was the first leader out of the gate. Those people who went, right, okay, great, I've got this thing now and it's a bit better than Google for certain things, I'll use that. They probably don't have any reason. Why would they move to Anthropic? It's like when, or with browsers, when Firefox was the main browser, why would anyone move to Chrome at the beginning, or whatever. It's like there's so many examples of this, isn't there, where it's like maybe the masses are just still bought into the one that's familiar to them. Because I think the stats are a bit different when you break it down by use case, right? So I think maybe as a coding
Anthropic,
yeah, I think so. So it's like maybe just that overall usage is still very much in OpenAI's court.
Yeah, it might just be the circles I'm moving in as well. Like I am more exposed to coders and developers and engineers, but there's this term that's getting flung around recently called Claude pilling. Like you'd taken the Claude pill and seen the light, and there's a lot of people cancelling their Cursor or their OpenAI or whatever accounts and moving fully into Claude Code and using that flow. And I think coupled with 4.6 stuff, people were just finding it extremely powerful. But I've also heard that 5.3 Codex is really, really good as well.
I heard that too. Just the other thing with Claude obviously is co-work, and I think that could be a game changer in terms of pulling maybe more people who aren't coding over to Anthropic, to Claude, because you could basically do a lot of the things you could do in Claude Code, but it doesn't have to be for code. So I don't know if you've seen anything. I haven't seen anything yet. It's probably too early to know around like stats to do with how well that's doing, and whether it is potentially moving people over. But I guess that will come out in due course.
Yeah, I read something the other day that it's not a coincidence that all of these models started to be were good at code first, and it was an intentional move by the foundation AI companies, because they wanted to get to a point of self-improvement with models and anything they were producing in terms of like UI and interfaces and things. And now they're kind of there. They've got to a point where I think OpenAI, Anthropic, they're all pretty much stating that more than half of the code that's being produced by them internally is being done via these agents. So the next frontier is the rest of white collar work a little bit, almost like, and now everything else. And that's what it feels like co-work is a stab at, and maybe Codex in time, like that now local environment. Just getting really good at just using a computer to deliver work and access different sources and all that stuff.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because that's the foundational layer. Like all of these, you talk about like, knowledge work or computer-based work. Well, what's that doing? It's running code, So it's like, no matter what, you might think as the user, you might think, no, I'm writing a document, or I'm writing a blog, or I'm working in a spreadsheet, or I'm doing whatever. I'm booking tickets on for my colleagues to go to a conference, or, whatever you're doing, booking flights, doing this, doing that. I'm ordering supplies in, but you're doing all of that through code. So it makes sense, doesn't it? It's like that foundational layer. If they were able to crack that, everything else is, I'm going to say easy. Obviously it's not easy, but relatively speaking, it's easy then, because all of those, that kind of core foundation is in place. Everything else just gets layered on top of that.
Yeah. And I had a play with Claude Co-work the other day for the first time, really, because I don't, most of what I do generally will be either just sort of maybe like strategic thinking and just chatting. I'll just be chatting to an AI around thoughts and ideas, etc., or coding. And for the most part, they've just been happening in Claude Code or just within the chat interface. But I got it. I went to Claude Co-work to help me produce a document the other day, and the output was really pretty brilliant. Like it gave me like a good 10-page document, headers, tables, the whole works. Like it moved through various different plugins and pulled in different information and went and searched and did some research, and it was just quite a polished piece. The problem I still had is I sat and watched it because it took a while, and I was watching the process. I still need to get to my head, like, go away and do something else while it's doing all that.
Yeah, stop micromanaging.
Exactly, which, yeah. So it's really interesting, and I'm sure it's only going to get better and better. And it's that thing we keep saying about where you're just removing or reducing down the level of the barrier to entry to the point where it is that iPhone moment of like a person can just open up a screen, type in plain English a thing, and something brilliant gets passed back to them as a result. And that's the inflection point where things start to change dramatically.
Yeah, that's when things get really interesting. But it's true, isn't it? I'm kind of thinking about that from the perspective of friction. And the thing about friction is you don't necessarily know it was there until it's taken away. And like even with the stuff that we're doing, and we're kind of playing around with either internally at Measure Lab or just on our own even, and it's like every new capability you add takes away a previous point of friction. And once you take that point away, you realize how frustrating that friction was. So yeah, which is almost a good and a bad thing, because then if something goes wrong, you're like, I don't understand. Why can't I just click a button and have that thing work like it did before? I don't want to spend time trying to fix it, So it's like every single iteration of this stuff is just making it easier and easier, and just removing more and more friction. And it's like with the trajectory of it, it's like it really is crazy to think about where that's going to end up. And it's like, what is the final destination of that? Is it literally, oh, we always go to stuff, or maybe it's my fault. We're all going to have a chip. We're going to have a chip in our head, or we're going to be like the people from WALL-E. We're just all going to be, floating around in little space pods or something, all connected to the grid.
Fat people watching telly all day. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It feels. And I think one thing is true, and I think this is exemplified by what we said at the top of the podcast, where we both kind of half listened to the last podcast, and it felt so outdated, like not like it hasn't done before. Like occasionally, yeah, there'll be some big piece of news. I think even one podcast we recorded last year, I was saying, oh, Gemini 3 might be out soon, and Gemini 3 was already out because we'd pre-recorded it. That didn't feel as out of date than this last one, and maybe that's because of our own learning and the journeys we've gone on a little bit internally over the past sort of 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe it's the industry, but it just feels like something has shifted a little bit in terms of use and the sort of putting this stuff to work and hooking systems together and just the maturation of the utilization of things that wasn't necessarily there November, December, that is suddenly there. And OpenClaw is a good example, right? Because Maltbot,
OpenClaw, you've gone the other way around. Yeah, there was a third name. There was one that they only had for a day. CloudBot was the original, wasn't it? And then they were briefly Maltbot, yeah, and then now OpenClaw.
Yeah, and that is like I was reading about the guy who created it, who has just been hired by OpenAI. That's a piece of news in there. But he just started that because he just thought, well, I'd like to be able to just chat to it on my phone when I go and make a cup of tea. So he just vibed a little message handler to be able to talk to the LLM via his Telegram or his WhatsApp thing, and then from there spawned this whole infrastructure, which has, we mentioned it briefly last podcast. Since then, it is, the GitHub clone map is hilarious. It is a completely vertical line. It's beyond exponential. It just does that. And yeah, we've been playing with it ourselves internally just to see the use of that. But it's such a good realization of that. Pull all these things together, remove the frictions from all over the place. The friction of just having to be sat at a computer to talk to something versus just messaging it on Telegram and it going off and be able to code and deploy something for you. Like, there's so many frictions have fallen over in the past few weeks. Yeah, I went off on one a bit there, but that it just...
No, you're right. And I think a point you made before, I'm not going to try and guess when, but it was definitely on a previous podcast episode, that even if things stopped today, there's so much more potential of what already exists that's unexplored because it's just happening at such a breakneck speed that nobody can possibly keep up. And the potential of what's already there now and the way it makes you think about what's possible and over what kind of timescales is mind-boggling. Because even when you said there about how, OpenClaw was developed because the guy wanted to have a way of, reducing friction for himself, so he's done this. And it integrates with all these channels. You can use Slack, you can use Telegram, whatever. And I've been using Telegram. I think you have been too. And I've already reached a point where Telegram is bothering me because of some of its limitations. So I'm going to build my own custom interface, and I do appreciate sometimes the advice from the AIs could be a bit patronizing and it can be a bit annoying, but sometimes it's quite helpful. I basically ran the idea by my personal AI, and it said, this is a really great idea. And I actually thought this was inevitable that you would think of this, but this is not something to get sucked into right now. So you should park this one. And I thought, wow, that was actually, yes, thank you for that. You've done me a solid there, because it was like this, you are going to lose a week on this if you decide to do it now.
Yeah, easily. I mean, the part of what I've been doing in the intervening 2 weeks is, and I think you've also done this, is like I built a Kanban. Like, I know there's various versions of these Kanbans existing in the world, but I've got like a Kanban that I can ping it off to agents and Claude Code and all this sort of stuff. There's chat interfaces within the Kanban. I've managed to get other people and other agents and other systems into that Kanban, and it's a demonstration of what we've been saying for a while as well around the landscape for software as a service. Like, this is the first time I've really seen it and go like, I saw that Kanban thing over there. It wasn't quite what I wanted, and I've just completely invented one. And there's tons of people who are doing the same thing, who've got zero coding experience, that are spinning up very bespoke, specific solutions just for them that serve the purpose. That feels like the way most problem solving is going to go in short order.
Yeah, and there's a whole other topic, and we've talked about this, in bits before, and we won't get into it now, but there's the whole kind of flip side of that, which is around the kind of governance and security and, having guardrails in place. Because on the one hand, it's wild, isn't it? It's like you've got this kind of hugely powerful, it's like having some kind of big supercar or something, but you've got to know how to drive it, and you've got to have barricades, or what do they call them on the F1 track, like chicanes or whatever. And if you don't have that in place, you're going to drive your Formula One car off the cliff or into someone's house or whatever. So it's like the power is insane, the potential is insane, but there obviously there's a flip side to that. People can be churning things out and even pushing them out publicly, sharing them, and they could have inherent security issues. This was a big thing around OpenClaw, and some of it was obviously quite clickbaity because it became a trend, a trending topic, but around the vulnerabilities of using OpenClaw if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the problem with any discourse around any of this stuff at the minute, is it instantly polarizes into trying to grab clicks for and against it. And so you get it, and it doesn't help. I don't think it really helps. With OpenClaw, I think we've both got isolated environments when we've been using it. I've got like a home server I've got it on, and it's all sort of hidden away and all of that sort of stuff. But basic things that people who aren't necessarily used to programming and things like that, like pushing a load of API keys up into GitHub or opening up various channels without knowing about it, people were giving it credit card information to go off and make spending and purchasing decisions for them, and finding that it had spent a load of money. I mean, there's some stuff that you just wouldn't do. But yeah, I think sensible, considered use is good, and it's pretty much a limitless sort of horizon of the things you can plug together and work with it.
This is very cliche, but you are only limited by your own imagination. I think it's, most things, not everything obviously, but most things you can do now. It's just a case of, do you want to do them? Does it make sense to do them? And can you do them without causing any harm?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a good point probably to get into, to weave this back into our main topic. Unless there's anything, there might be more you want to share on the news front or personal front, but we're talking a lot here around current potential, but also future potential. But we want to try and say what we do think. Nobody can say what will happen, but we do want to kind of focus a little bit on what we do think are some of the certainties, and I might use them in quotes. So what are we seeing that we think is going to maybe stand the test of time, or who are the players that we think are going to have a good chance of still being, in the race at the finish line?
Yeah, it feels like we talked about that feeling of fragility with, say, OpenAI, for example, earlier, because they're running massive deficits of revenue, and it feels like if a bubble bursts, and I think we're both in agreement that a bubble exists, it's just not necessarily a bubble that undermines the technology. It's a bubble of over speculation in various parts of the market and round robin NVIDIA backhanders and all that sort of stuff. If that bubble burst, you could see someone like OpenAI collapsing because they just don't have the revenue to support what it is they're trying to do. They're putting huge bets on massive infrastructures and all the rest of it, and hiring people for obscene amounts of money. But I can't see past the dust settling and Google not still being stood there. There may be more than one person stood there, company, metaphorical AI body, people. But yeah, I can't see past Google still being alive and well, and hoovering up anything that gets left behind because of, well, a lot of reasons, I suppose. I don't know where to start on that front, but
no, I don't either. Maybe if I talk for a minute, it'll give you an idea. It'll give you a chance to think about where to start. I think you're right. I think one of the main, and maybe this will actually cover some of the individual things we'll talk about, but I think Google have, at a kind of high level, maybe they've got such a good chance because they're not all in on one aspect of this. They've got a little bit more. They're hedging their bet a little bit, whether this is strategic or just the nature of how their business is built. They're not new to this space. So Anthropic are new to this space. OpenAI are new to this space. Meta and Microsoft aren't either. And maybe we'll get to them, maybe we won't. But Google aren't just a frontier AI model company. They're a established, global, respected technology company. So that maybe is like the overarching view of this. And then obviously there's a lot of of aspects to that.
Yeah, I mean, their earnings call recently highlighted a lot of where where they are seeing big wins. So that I think Google Cloud has seen 48% increase in revenue, or I forget the exact metric they were seeing. And I think that is, and all of that really, if you think about it, over the past couple of years, they very much pivoted pretty much every aspect of the cloud platform to AI in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's layering it into BigQuery, and pretty much every day you open BigQuery now, there's a new button, a new interface, a new way to interact with Gemini in some way, shape, or form. They baked in all of the AI functions into BigQuery to call like generate and things like that over large pieces of data. They've built out all of Vertex and everything that goes on there, and that's just cloud. That's if we don't start to mention things like the fact they have the Android operating system, or they have Chrome, or they have Workspace with email and docs and sheets and collabs, and they've just got so many different surfaces and such a wide plethora of things to stuff AI into and see what does or does not stick. Search. So I can't believe I forgot about search.
Oh yeah, that little thing.
Yeah. And it did feel like for a while they definitely had the most to lose, but then I think they eventually moved in a relative decisive way. And at the end of last year, it really felt like a big old gut punch to OpenAI when Gemini 3 came out and was good, and everyone was saying what a leap it was. I think since then there's been a model from each of the different frontiers that have kept up with it, but it's everything else, isn't it?
And I think that, yeah, maybe that leads on to the next point, but obviously they are, you're right, like Gemini, I even just had a thought there of like, are they going to rebrand to Gemini at some point? Because it's plastered all over everything. And, could this be part of the longer term transformation? Are they going to morph into just being Gemini at some point? But it's absolutely like it's running through everything now, in not just cloud, but like you said, Workspace, and I guess all of these things do actually sit on cloud. So maybe cloud is the way to, the umbrella term for it. But they obviously are doing, groundbreaking work around AI. The stuff that DeepMind do, and they merge DeepMind with all their names are similar. They had another like AI arm or
Shallow Mind. I don't know.
They merged, yeah. They merged them together and brought them all under the kind of one umbrella. And they're obviously doing really groundbreaking work there. But they
just won a Nobel. They won a Nobel Prize. That's not even LLMs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's not like they don't know what they're doing on the AI front, but it's not their only horse in the game or horse in the race, or it's not the only race they're in. That's one horse in one race, but they've got coverage in other places, and their infrastructure is also supporting some of the other AI companies. So it's not even like they've got a fallback outside of AI. They've got a fallback within the AI arms race.
Yeah. Well, it's like we keep saying in terms of, I keep saying, and I think you agree with this, but there's essentially two things that feel like they have the longest tail in all of this. As work starts to get gobbled up and be produced and done by AIs more and more, the two underpinning pieces that are going to still be needed is data and its infrastructure. It's a way of pulling together and facilitating these systems, and it's the fuel to make it good and personalized and better. So take out the model entirely, and let's just assume that we just stay where we are right now. And we've already said there's a lot of utility left in these models that we already have. Is there anybody else better positioned than Google when it comes to data, particularly because they have BigQuery, or they've built an entire infrastructure around analytics and data storage and data movement and data modeling and pipelining and semantics and glossaries and all of this sort of stuff that's going to add fuel to that fire. Is there anyone better positioned than Google in that front? And is there anyone better positioned than Google on the infrastructure side, as in to for modeling for this stuff that they're building. So they think about all the stuff they're building with Vertex and their agent development kit and all of this. They're so, I don't know if it's accidental, but they're so well positioned for both of those things to make the most of what's here and what's coming.
Yeah, you'd love to know, wouldn't you? If it was like, if you asked someone from Google, they'd obviously tell you, oh yeah, no, that was all, we saw where it was headed, and this is all.
Yeah, 2002 we decided.
Yeah, we thought, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both, but you're right. And I think, that underlying data piece, I mean, that's at the core of it, isn't it? Because we were talking about how Gemini is plastered all over everything, but BigQuery really is the kind of engine. If that fits in we throw out so many metaphors and analogies, but BigQuery is it's the engine, or it's the backbone, or it's something in some kind of analogy or metaphor.
It's the shin. BigQuery is the shin of Google Cloud Platform. Yeah, it is, and they even relabeled it, right? They changed what it was called to autonomous data and AI platform or something.
Something like that. It was really uncatchy, but something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
yeah. So if you just think about those two pieces, whether the intelligence bit or the place where you interact with it or whatever it is exists there, I don't know, but it definitely feels like the bones of it, the shin and the models, and because I think that's why they are so happy to put any model pretty much within Vertex. Like we have, we've got Claude Code at the company, and we supply that to staff who need it via Vertex, because we can centralize it all and it can all just work nice and seamlessly within there. And they've got all these models from everyone you can think of, really, apart from OpenAI.
Yes, yeah. Look, read into that what you will. The other thing about BigQuery, just because we're we're maybe quite zoomed out here, which is the partly the point of this episode, but to zoom in a little bit for a second, Google really did quite a clever move in opening GA4 up to BigQuery. So different people have different, very strong views around GA4. But one thing you can't fault Google for is opening up that pipeline from GA4 to BigQuery to everybody, because even like companies of all sizes and shapes can, from day one, if they've got GA4, they've got all of that data pumping into BigQuery. So, people will be using it to various different extents, and people will be layering other data in and pulling in other data sources. And whether you have a fully fledged data warehouse or not, the fact is you've got that in, the door is open. Whereas it's not quite so straightforward to think, oh well, we've got our analytics platform, we've got our CRM, whatever. Now where do we go, and what cloud do we plug that into? It's almost like Google. It's almost like it's a hook or they get you straight away if you're already using that very, very popular analytics products that they've been offering for the last 20 years or whatever.
Yeah. And then they've carried on extending that out with growing the data transfer service in BigQuery. So you've got like Google Ads in there, Search Console. They've extended it out to things like Meta Ads, connecting the OpenCloud network. So you can, from BigQuery, I can query Snowflake, or I can query AWS, or I can query Azure directly and just have the results appear in. I mean, I think a few of them are doing that, but it's to that point of just making it as simple as possible to have that data centralized. And all of that, I suppose, also feeds into the fact that with OpenAI or Anthropic currently, your data lives still in silos to a certain extent. You kind of having to go off to these different sources and pull it into a system and then talk to that system to get an output and look at that. Whereas Google and the warehouse approach does mean that it's your data. You've centralized it and you own it, and you can do whatever you want with it, manipulate it how you want it, model it, all of these things. Having just these other LLM surfaces is not quite as straightforward, unless you then went and hooked it up to you could hook BigQuery up to OpenAI or Anthropic, I suppose, but Google owns the whole journey.
That's the point, isn't it? They're able to kind of say, well, look, you come to us for this and we can offer you our version, or you can use your alternative. If you don't want that, you might want something else, and the same applies. Like if you want to use a different model over there, you can use our data warehousing. If you want to use AWS for your data, you can use our Gemini models. It's kind of a broad, they've got broad coverage. That means, but with each of those, if they get you in on one of them, over time, they've got a good chance of getting you over to the other aspects of it. So they just need that. I mean, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about getting it's about getting the foot in the door. And then once you've got that, you can obviously start to offer more. So they've got a lot of, I need to flip this, but it's like attack surfaces. They've got the opposite of attack surfaces, don't they? It's like they've got all those different areas that they can grab people.
They can attack us.
Yeah, maybe attack surface is the right way to put it.
Because I was thinking about it when you said about them renaming themselves to Gemini. Like I've got a Pixel phone, so they also own the hardware. They got laptops. They got an operating system in Chrome OS. But when I turn on my Pixel phone, the logo that pops up is Gemini. So like that's the boot. The boot is Gemini. It's not like it turns into Google after the fact, but it is Gemini in the first instance. And then we've seen it from a Google Workspace front as well, because we've got Google Workspace at Measure Lab, and we got free access to Gemini. Not free access, but we didn't have to pay anything extra. We were already paying whatever, and then here you go. Here's Gemini and 3 Pro and the ability to hook up all these things, and here's Notebook LM and all of these other services that we just started using, and the easy, really simple ability for it to start pulling in 10 years worth of drive information and things like that we've not necessarily structured in any way. It just can go and grab it and pull it in.
Yeah,
they've got it made.
They've got it made, yeah. And we haven't even mentioned TPUs.
No, yeah, exactly. That's the next big one, isn't it? Because every other, I think I'm right in saying pretty much every other company, frontier model, are beholden to NVIDIA. Now, I know that I am 99% positive that Google will be very heavily using H100s or whatever it is from NVIDIA in the training of their models, but they're also using and developing out their own Tensor Processing Units. And I know that they did use some of those Tensor Processing Units in the training of Gemini 3. And you can imagine, a bubble burst and NVIDIA goes down, or all the companies surrounding it go down, and they're no longer the richest company in the world. Google still has a chip, a development pipeline, and all the rest of it to build out these processing units for AI that nobody else could possibly claim. I know OpenAI were thinking about trying to make their own chips a couple of years ago, probably for this exact reason.
But it seems a bit, I mean, maybe they are working on it in the background, but you just can't imagine they are. It's almost like it's too late on that front, you would think, wouldn't you? Especially for OpenAI, with everything else that they've got going on, and the perhaps, although as you added the disclaimer, maybe it's our perspective, but it does seem like they're under pressure at the moment. So it's harder to imagine they're off developing their own chips when
maybe they're making a pencil.
Yeah, pencil.
Is that true? I don't know.
I don't know.
I think I heard that secondhand from you, to be honest.
I thought I heard it secondhand from you. No, there was something. So
we just made up a lie to each other, and
That's what we do. That's what we do here on the Measure Pod. No, there is talk of it's the Johnny Ive collaboration, and I don't know if it came. This is the thing with a lot of this stuff. Like, these supposed leaks, are they leaks from people who actually know what they're talking about, or is it speculation that then gets framed as a leak? But yeah, it's been presented as being like a pencil, which just has to make you laugh. You're like, you can imagine sitting in a room thinking, right, we've got to come up with this crazy futuristic way of interfacing with all this technology. And then after about 2 hours and 7 cups of coffee, it's like, it could just be a pencil.
And one of them is just chewing a pencil, and it's like,
oh, eureka.
Wait a minute. Let's make a digital pencil. Yeah, I hope it isn't that, because it did sound like it was so simple and groundbreaking. And again, just to take this back to Google, are there any other frontier model owners, like as in people who develop their own models, that have a device other than Google? As in, they have phones and laptops. Like I know Microsoft have, that they use OpenAI as a model and stuff like that for Copilot, don't they? And that's not gone very well. I'm just trying to think if anyone who's already in the market.
Not the big ones, I don't think. Whether there's any smaller fringe companies that do hardware as well, I don't know. Like consumer hardware, I'm not sure.
No. Yeah, but and obviously Google are now supplying it for Apple as well. But just to take it back to zoom in a little bit, I think for a lot of the reasons we've just discussed, that the sort of ease and ability to get the data centralized into BigQuery, the power and the growing sort of utility of BigQuery from the really helpful AI features they're actually starting to add in there. It's starting to feel less like bloat and starting to feel like real, useful assets and new things that are being added in there. All of the add-ons that can then get built around that, once you've got that data centered and modeled and pulled together, they have their own modeling framework and solution in data form that's baked into BigQuery that makes it really nice and easy to interact with things. It feels like that is the best place and solution for data and analytics specifically, as in, centralizing your analytics, growth, marketing, whatever you want to call it, data, and using it for analysis or to build out agentic solutions for conversation analytics. They've also released conversation analytics. Every time I say a new sentence, I remember. Yeah, but it just feels like that is a really safe, growing, ever-improving platform that is already the be-all, the top end of what you can do with data and analytics, and it's only improving, and take out of that any model.
Well, and data and analytics is becoming, it's a broader thing now, because data and analytics isn't just within the realms of marketing, customer, product. You're talking about personal data, personal analytics. So like everything, such a what is it, a truism, or I don't know what this is, a cliche maybe, but it's like everything is data. Everything online is data. Everything you use, anything people use, fitness trackers, or it could be journaling software or whatever. Anything and everything people use in their own lives is the data that's collected behind that all needs to sit somewhere as well. So again, maybe Google are seeing the bigger picture and thinking data and analytics isn't just a business requirement or a business function. It's actually going to be a growing need for personal analytics, personal data, and that's all going to have to sit somewhere, and you're going to need all the things Google provide, like semantic layers and governance and security and all the rest of it. So, and even if the end customer doesn't know that, it could be that the people building the products for customers are using the Google infrastructure. So, it's almost like it is the backbone or the shin. It's the shin bone of everything.
I wonder if Google are going to adopt this marketing strategy that we put forward for them.
Don't be the spine. That's overrated, and people get a lot of spine issues. When have you ever heard of anyone with a shin problem?
No, and if you do, they collapse instantly. So you need the shin.
It's integral. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think definitely there's so much more data that's useful to a business than just the traditional structured stuff that you might stick into BigQuery. I mean, BigQuery has extended itself out to be multimodal now. You can put in, non-structured data and use that as alongside the other stuff that's in there to contextualize things a little bit more. So, there's AI note takers everywhere. There's things like Fathom and Gemini and Otter and Fireflies. I always get that the wrong way around. Years of documentation in Slack and things like that could all be looked at, pulled together and explored in new and interesting ways that we haven't done before. Nothing is lost. Everything can be used.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? That's something that's coming up more and more. It's like this idea that nothing is, in the past, if you had, whether it's business data again or actual personal data, you'd have it spread across so many different places. And then even when things started to get digitized, they still didn't live in one place. And now it's almost getting to a point where it's not even about whether it sits in one place or not. It's about whether it sits somewhere and it can be pulled together and some semantics can be layered on top of that, and then you can get some intelligence from that. So it's like it doesn't really matter where things are, as long as they are somewhere, and then you can funnel them into something like BigQuery, especially now that it's got multimodal support, and you could just have all of that unstructured data, but you can still make sense of it and actually query it, whether it's through a chat interface or a pencil, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Or a pair of creepy looking glasses.
Yeah, you can film people without their consent, all those good things. Yeah, it's and what I might do just to round that off is just to undermine everything we just said.
Makes sense.
Say that that's a guess, right? It's looking at Google and looking the way they're positioned, it feels like they are in a really strong position moving forward to really take advantage of the new technology, the growing market, the use of it, the infrastructure, the data. But this is the most unpredictable time in technological history, perhaps is not too much of an overstatement. Who knows where this goes in the next few weeks? Google will almost certainly be part of the future, but what part of any given layer they take down the line is hard to say. You know, like we said earlier, the output layer, the interaction layer, the intelligence layer could live somewhere else, and Google just settle into infrastructure and data management and modeling, or they could release things that are fantastic, or somebody else could release something that no one's possibly thought of and just blows the whole thing up again. You don't know, but that's the current lay of the land.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody knows for sure, but I think, you know, what you said at the very start is like you can, if you had to place a bet, you would bet on Google being there when the dust settles, because of that kind of broad coverage that they have and all those different strengths that they have, and the kind of heritage and the infrastructure that they offer. But as a follow-on point from saying that, you know, nothing is lost and everything is available and connected, we can look back and see if we've made fools of ourselves with this, because by the next episode, we might have to start issuing apology. We'll have to start doing apology episodes. Say, oh, all that stuff we said, Google have collapsed.
Yeah, Google collapsed. OpenAI have bought Britain. So we need to say apologies to our new overlords. Yes, we don't know. We do not know.
We don't, but it's exciting to be part of it. And I think just to kind of wrap up, I think this is where we're going to start to bring other points of view on. You know, you made the point about kind of are we in a bubble? So our kind of guest strategy for this season, if we call them seasons, is going to be trying to get obviously people who are in this space, but maybe try and see if we can get different perspectives so that we can kind of make sure that we're being somewhat objective about where we see things going. But I think for today, we've done enough speculating and enough future gazing.
Yes, I think anything else is just, in fact, I'm just not going to say anything.
All right, until next time.
See you later.
That's it for this week's episode of the Measure Pod. We hope you enjoyed it and picked up something useful along the way. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss future episodes.
And if you're enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you left us a quick review. It really helps more people discover the pod and keeps us motivated to bring back more. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.